Africa Sports Ventures Group. One Africa, one world.
Just joining us, I want to welcome you to this Africa Day 2020 African Sports Venture Group conference. For that, way, our main topic or our theme is the future of sports in Africa post COVID-19. And I am your master of ceremony, David Vandy, and I have a very, very wonderful people on the panel today. And so we're going to go to our third session. You know, if this was not a virtual meeting, we would have said, let's take a 15 minutes break. But since it's a virtual meeting, we will just proceed. So our next session is the fans engagement. Fans engagement. This is also going to be a 45 minutes dialogue, and then we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A. And in this phase, we want to see what are the dynamics that sports officials and organizations have to contend with post-COVID-19 as fans return to stadiums in Africa and around the world. And what are the new paradigm shifts in content delivery that media houses and content creators will have to pay attention to as fans seek new ways to immerse themselves in content consumption. You know, the fans have been out for a long time. You know, I am a supporter of the great Liverpool Football Club in England. And, you know, we're supposed to be winning the championship in England after 30 years, and some people don't want us to win it, you know. And even when they were talking about the resumption of the Premier League, the one difficulty that he had was that if Liverpool is being given the championship, or if we're allowed to just win the championship because we're miles away ahead of all the others, we'll have thousands and thousands of people that will be crowded at Anfield, and that will not be good for everybody because of the health situation, you know. So we're looking at fans will have to go back. They will have to go back to these stadiums, you know. And so what are we putting in place to welcome these fans back into the stadium? And so we have our dynamic moderator, who is one of us at the African Sports Ventures Group, who is going to be moderating this particular session. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce to you the former publicist of Usain Bolt, Ms. Carol Beckford, who is the Director of Talent Management and Academics in this division. Carol has spent at least 32 years as a journalist and has covered sports, news, and entertainment in the global space. Based in Jamaica, she has traveled widely to present at workshops and conferences worldwide, where she has participated as a speaker on several topics on sports management, sports marketing, and branding. She covered football, cricket, basketball, hockey, netball in her earlier years in the business, and writes guest columns for a wide variety of publications globally. In the last 10 years of professional life, her professional life includes a body of work to include head of marketing and communications, West Indies Cricket Board, Cricket West Indies, film commissioner in Jamaica, publicist for Usain Bolt, media manager, Jamaica's investment and export agency, Jampro, author of 2 books, Keeping Jamaica's Sports on Track, 2007, and Jamaica is in Sports and Tourism, 2016. She has 2 decades of experience in sports administration, where during these years she served as president, Jamaica Volleyball Association, marketing team for America's Volleyball, NOSIA, and sat on several organizing committees for regional and international games in a variety of sporting disciplines. Carol is ranked in the 100 most followed sports professionals on Twitter. She has been an NFL, NBA, MLB fan for at least 3 decades. She enjoys reading and watching television. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our most dynamic moderator, Carol Beckford.
Hi. Well, it's morning here in Jamaica. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to everybody. I'm particularly impressed to be involved in such an awesome group of people. And the 2 previous panels were exciting. I hope I'm able, in cricket terms, be able to catch up on the back end. So these are, when you come in after lunch, it's important that you maintain your integrity. But I'm happy to be a part of this. And on this panel, we're going to be talking about continuing the discussion, the future of sports in Africa, but we're talking about fan engagement and fan retention. On this panel, we have some established and credible people. Mario Leo, who is the CEO of Results Sports. Cynthia Mumbo, who is the founder and CEO of Sports Connect Africa. Lalade Adewuyi, who is the founder of Africa Digital Sports. And Emeka Enyadike, who is the director of Digital Sports Africa. Now, I was listening to the earlier conversations, and we talk about streaming. And I'm going to start with Mario, because Mario, in an article in January, his website spoke about 2020 being the year of streaming. And in this context, how do we define who a fan is?
Carol, thank you very much for your question. And I'm very honored also, sitting in Germany inside my garden, to be part of the event. And I congratulate, obviously, the organizers for such an esteemed event. Yeah, streaming is obviously becoming more and more powerful, because obviously I work as an UEFA mentor. I work very closely with organizations and federations, and obviously we see that linear TV is struggling to get the budgets onto the classical linear TV, because the shift in the advertising and in the branding industry towards the digital channels is more and more happening, and it's becoming faster and faster. And obviously linear TV with a scheduled program, we see that in the younger generations, the likes of 15 to 25, they are not used to watch linear TV schedules anymore. They want to watch when they have time, they want to watch their content. And streaming obviously fulfills that requirement very, very closely. And as we see a lot of those initiatives, and at the moment, obviously, the TV rights in some of the countries, they are aligned for the next 3 years. But after that, I think that we will see an even stronger shift, and we see in the ramping up towards the next 3 years, that obviously this shift will be happening, and I predict that the majority of content will be going through streaming.
How then, before I go over to Lalade, how then would you describe a fan in the context of 2020? I mean, because you talk about investment in stadia and all that, and the spaces, what then is the future of a venue where a fan is concerned?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question. But obviously, through the rise of digital media and social media, which I've been following over the last 10 years very closely on day-to-day activities, working with athletes, clubs, leagues, and federations, the reality is that 99% of the fans are outside the venue, distributed across the planet. I mean, when you look, we've heard it just earlier from David and the panelists. Yeah, they are emotional fans of Liverpool or the Premier League teams, and we are residing all across the planet. But the brand is so strong that it admires to us. Obviously, it's a conjunction. Live sports, especially venue sports like football, basketball, they live from the inside atmosphere. Obviously, in Germany, it's the second weekend now where football, the Bundesliga, has resumed. And obviously, we see that obviously the attention for it, because the hunger for it, because having 2 months, no real live action of sports is obviously huge. The demand for live content and live action is incredible. but obviously it misses the atmosphere. Yeah, the new normal, as they call it here in Germany, without attendance. We hope that the new normal is not as long as possible. We hope that the atmosphere in the stadium is as important to the fans around the world. And I think that's the unique combination. So I think overall, we need, it sort of needs a strategy across combining it all. It needs the local strategy where obviously the fans inside the stadium, they are part of the entertainment angle. And obviously the people across on the TVs, on the mobile devices, they want to be entertained. And it's partially obviously the game on the pitch, and it's partially obviously the entertainment around and the fans around and the anthems and the songs and the dances and the cheers around. They are a crucial part of that entertainment industry of sports. So it's a combination, but it needs a well strong strategy and a well executed plan to make it happen.
Okay, I want to bring in Lolade here. He's the founder of the Africa Digital Sports Conference, which is a fabulous event that he has managed to host for a little bit. And he looks at the digital space and the growth in sports. Lolade, what will be probably one of your biggest challenges as we try to revive and look at the way sports is now consumed in Africa in particular? Lolade?
Lolade, can you unmute your microphone, please?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you clearly now.
I started speaking. I forgot about the mute button. Okay, thank you, Carol, for the question, and I'm happy to be here with everyone. People I really respect, Mario, Emeka, Cynthia, and everybody has spoken before. For me, the digital space and lack of sports at the moment, lack of live sport is something we really have to consider in an African context. You find that many football clubs, many sports properties do not have their own content, and so they deal, African sports properties generally have had to struggle now with engaging their fans, keeping fans engaged, especially I take a look at Nigeria, where football clubs don't even have audiovisual content to share, while you see European clubs just bringing out content from their archives and engaging their fans throughout this period. So for Africa, we're basically, many properties are are struggling already, and but you find that the best practice is having access to your own content, creating your content, and having these archives that are able to keep your fans engaged in a period like this, which nobody really envisaged that it would happen. It's interesting, Mario's work predicting the growth of live streaming in sports, but for Africa, it's still in a basic place where we finish the competition and we all go back home. Once the TV stations have come, recorded, they have the master tapes. Event owners or the sports clubs do not have access to their own content. So it provides definitely a different dynamic, an interesting thing for the future. You need to have your hands on your media. Unfortunately, if I speak from the Nigerian context, you find the problems of financing for clubs and maybe lack of vision also, because a football club like Enyimba that I did some research on a few years ago for my master's, they only had one person managing the entire media department. So how is this person able to shoot out press releases and also able to make photos or even record videos or create this kind of content that could engage their followers at a time like this? Same thing for Kano Pillars that Gary mentioned in the beginning of this conference. Big clubs with a big club with a huge following, but really little resources given to the media departments or media managers to execute adequate fan engagement, which could be really good for a period like we are in. So, but then you compare something like what the NBA has done with the last dance of Michael Jordan, you know, and that's gotten the whole world engaged to the brand NBA, not just Michael Jordan as a legend, but to the brand NBA, and for us planning to come back. And you realize that we are miles apart because, you know, these media itself is expensive, and then having this power to be able to archive and create content is a winner for the future, which we are in now in post-COVID era, and the importance of telling our own stories. And I believe this definitely will shape how we see and engage sports media going forward.
Okay. That was quite enlightening because, you know, you made a particular point, and I guess it's a good time to go to Emeka, who is a writer. You talk about creating other products that will probably generate some kind of interest, and something like a documentary, that data and content has to be collected to be presented in a way to have people engaged. It may be one of the things that we use to convert people to stay at home more and then create their own, let's call it mini stadiums at home so they can view. So I'd like to introduce now Emeka Enyadike, who is a multidimensional writer on sports marketing and sponsorship. And he's also a sports commentator and an analyst. And I'd like to ask Emeka, how do you then keep these fans as somebody who commentates? Do you like the feel of a full stadium when you're commentating, or are you in your box with your headsets and you're fine? You know, let's welcome Emeka.
Emeka, unmute your microphone, please.
Where's Emeka?
No. We're not getting Emeka.
Okay. Well,
the microphone is muted again.
Oh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh, okay.
Emeka.
Okay, so thank you very much. Pleasure to be on the same panel with some good friends, Mario, Lolade, and Carol. Good to make the acquaintance. I just want to say that one of the most interesting things about the lockdown is the fact that you know, a lot has changed in terms of how fans consume sports, and so I mean, you asked about commentary. I mean, commentary has also evolved. I mean, we in Africa, a lot of people grew up watching, rather listening to radio for many years, and that shifted also to television. And then now we've got the era where there's a lot of platforms where people engage, especially on the mobile. You know, a lot of the challenges this period has been how much content people are able to share on social, and the ability to engage with fans, create unique content. Yes, I like to hear the sound from the fans in the stadium, but you know, modern sport has gone beyond just the fans in the arena to more of a global audience. And with some of the properties that we have, unfortunately in Africa, we haven't been able to take advantage of the huge youth population we have in Africa, very tech savvy, mobile first, and a whole lot of them out there who engage with the best of Europe. Unfortunately, the kind of production we have in Africa is so limited. We almost tend to ignore what we need to offer them in the continent, and rather feed them with a lot of international content. So, you know, from my perspective, I think that COVID-19 offers us an opportunity to relook at what kind of content we want to offer. I mean, we've got scenarios where a lot of the young people do not really miss a lot of the live action because they're all sold to gaming and PlayStation and FIFA, and that's where there's a whole new dimension for commentary right now. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of African content in that space. So From a holistic point of view, there is opportunities for us to explore, and we've got to be able to look at how we offer the new market that is offered to us in terms of the youth dynamics.
And probably is a good way now to talk to Cynthia, for somebody who is the founder and CEO of Sports Connect. It will be almost her job now to develop tools and programs that will get to connect the things that Emeka just spoke about. And by the way, the marketing experts globally don't think it's any different to market to the current millennials and Generation X's, because we both grew up in the digital world. We all have 2 or 3 smartphones and a number of devices. So even although they're involved in gaming, which the Generation X's aren't, it is the same kind of, we older folks want to go out, because we'll still consume, but on their devices. And how this is as good a way to welcome Cynthia, who deals with Sports Connect. And what are some of the things? One, how she defines a fan, and how will she use Sports Connect to really reconnect, let's call it, Africa post-COVID. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Carol. I'm just going to go to numbers. I like numbers. 60% of Africa is under the age of 35. We have 300 million phones, digital. Mobile money is a big business now. So fintech is a conversation that we need to be having and understanding. This youthful population are extremely interested in sport. There's something that we rarely ever talk about, but I think is very powerful, something that we need to consider. The betting industry has grown to, it's worth $37 billion in the last 6 years, African betting. What are they betting on? What are these young guys betting on? They're spending their money on sport. They're spending their money betting on either local sport or international sport. They're betting on the English Premier League, the La Liga Classics and stuff. So there's definitely a spend. There's money being spent on sport by these young people on digital platforms. Only thing is that we haven't been able to push that to the local kind of framework. I'll give an example of a platform that's being launched pretty soon. www, if you guys have access to that right now, www.nexttvafrica.com. Very simple. It's an OTT platform that is going to be able to show the Nigerian Football League. Now, the interesting thing is, this was born before COVID. I mean, there was a whole conversation around the guys who were bringing this together, understanding what, the statistics that I've just given. So there's a very big opportunity around that. Now, Gary had spoken earlier about, digital platforms, mobile platforms, OTT platforms. I think what's critical for us to understand and move away from saying we aren't doing or this isn't happening is those of us who are in sport to say, what are we going to do about it? The space exists. Who are we going to collaborate with? Currently, as Sports Connect Africa, we're working on a fan engagement platform, both for local and international teams. The biggest challenge we came across is nobody really engages the fan, and I don't know how to express this, but to say in a very simple way, how does Gor Mahia, which is the team that I follow in Kenya, how does Gor Mahia connect with the local guy who follows him? You very rarely see them doing something very basic as win a ticket or something like that. Engagement does not mean, absolutely crazy ideas. It's sometimes the simplest actions that, connect you further and develop your relationship and your emotional connection to your fan. Sports is competitive as it is on the pitch. For us to move to a commercial conversation, we need to understand that we are competing with other teams off the pitch. So you want to build your team commercially. You want to have more followers as fans. So you want to be able to engage with these guys so that you have, you know, a more emotional connection, and that conversation that you have with them watching the team on the pitch can be moved off the pitch and can be moved into a commercial conversation. So I see the opportunities are there. We are working on stuff. It's not necessarily easy, but we also have to understand that, you know, it requires investment. This is not something that will happen overnight. As much as the digital engagement we're seeing today didn't happen overnight. Mario talked about it. You've been following it for several years. What's his name? Gary talked about it. Gary talked about having followed, you know, the movement from analog to digital for several years. So, you know, it's important for us to be able to see and say, in the next 5 years, where do we want to be as sports? It's not going to change over. We're seeing the NBA launch an NBA league now, but what people don't understand is the NBA has been in Africa for 10 years. They have 49 or so junior NBA leagues where they're connecting with young minds under 16, you know, running these leagues. In the next 10 years, when the Basketball Africa League is 10 years old, can you imagine the crazy kind of engagement that they'll be having with these guys who are now being introduced to the game of basketball in Africa? So it has to be a strategic conversation. You have to understand, you know, the environment. You have to understand the customer, the consumer. What are they doing? What are they talking about? And then create simple solutions that connect with them.
Okay. All right. So, you know, we would have heard about the different perspectives, and I'm taking a look at the next digital, the nexttvafrica.com information, but we're talking about fan engagement and retention. So the engagement possibly would be in the live stadium, and probably a good time to bring in back Mario, where we talk, where people are so accustomed to going out into the public, to get into queues, to go into the stadium, to hear the music and sound. How will then, as a series of marketers and digital experts, do we recreate this? Because that is really the aim. How do we, so yes, you have 60% of your population under 35, which is important. But at some point, there's going to be some amount of live thing that they want. And Mario maybe can answer, how then do we recreate this atmosphere for them, the inside atmosphere of a 20,000 or a 60,000 capacity venue?
Yeah, it's a good question, Carol. Obviously, Lolade has raised a very important topic which we monitor and observe Sub-Sahara all across, and obviously Cynthia has mentioned that as well. At the moment, obviously, the club strategies on digital and on social media particularly is just to generate information, just sending out information. There's no real requirement or no real approach for fan engagement at all. It's just like a one-sided communication going out. There's nothing, there's no voice coming back, or there's no request for a voice coming back. And I think that's a strategic mistake by many African sports organizations. And Lolade has raised the point that obviously where digital resides, they are usually in the media and communications department. And the media and the communications department, as you know, Carol, as being a very long time person in sports, is the only cost center in a sports organization in the 20th century. So marketing, earning money through sponsors and partners, ticketing, earning money through selling tickets, merchandising, earning money through selling merch, and digital resides in the media and communications department. You have one person running 3, 4, 5 things at the same time. So he's just happy to send out information. He's completely unable to get something back. And obviously that needs to change. That philosophy, that organizational structure needs to change. Digital needs to be a huge part of digital sports organizations in Africa. It's so important. And I don't think they don't have to be an external fan engagement platform. It first needs to be understood how powerful my internal engagement platform could be. And I think that's the most critical part which needs to change. And obviously we track social media data and follower data for the past 10 years. I love numbers as well. That's why I like Cynthia's initial sentence straight away. But it's really, really important to make use of those numbers, to make use to understand where are the fans, who I am communicating with. Do I have to speak a local dialect? Do I have to speak in international languages because I reach many, many more people? And I think that's the overall strategic understanding the sports organization needs to get. And I think COVID-19 is a unique opportunity to go beyond my own fan base as well. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
to get it done.
There's a question. I mean, and I know the athletes spoke about it. The African athletes, no matter what sport, football, cricket, track and field, whatever sport they participate in, are well loved globally. And I'd like to probably ask Lalade, there's a question, how then do we approach or reach the athletes outside of Africa? Because, you know, these things are very important. People like to consume Africa content, and I realize that there is a gap there. What then can be used as to get fans outside of your region?
Thank you, Carol. Yes. Thank you, Carol, for the question. I give an example of a small sport that we worked with. We've been working with for the past 3 years. It's a karate championship created by a leading karate practitioner in Nigeria. It's a women-only karate championship in West Africa called the Zenapsale Karate Championship. It's been, she basically started to do it out of her passion, but when I met with her, you know, proposed taking over her communication and trying to grow the brand value and recognizability for the championship. And so we started doing some storytelling. I think one of the important things we did was to recognize that this championship was not just about her as a passionate financier, but about the athletes that participate in the sport of karate. And so we decided to start telling stories of these stars, of these karate players, to show an opportunity for the world to get to know them better. And so last year, we chose one of the leading fighters and profiled her and, you know, pushed it on different platforms on the social media platforms, and this was able to get at least when people then went for the championship, they were able to recognize somebody, because how many people really follow? It's not football, it's not tennis or athletics where you recognize the athletes. So we try to tell the particular story of one person and push it on all platforms, in press releases and in video. She went on the interview on TV, you know. So in a way, able to make so the people who don't know about karate to know about one of the athletes in the sport and be able to relate with it. In a way, we took from what the NBA also did with Michael Jordan in the 80s and told the story, you know, build the brand around one particular athlete to for more people to follow her into the sport. So she became our fulcrum, our target for the competition, and eventually she won in her category. She won the title in her category, and we hope to continue that this year. So for people, the idea is to use sports that you don't know about, build a star, build an individual, an athlete that people can follow. Yes, that people can. It's easy. Like you work with Usain Bolt, he was a global star. It's easy to follow him, but small competitions, small sports need they need their own stars.
An outstanding character.
You know, so let's build stories around them and let us push them out to the world, and we can get some eyes into our sport. We may not get there with 100 million views or whatever now, but with consistency, you can build a brand around an athlete and bring value to your championship and your sport.
Okay, I have a question on gambling for Cynthia. they say that sports gambling is being clamped down in a number of areas, and with although sports betting has become very popular, do you think there is a cultural bias towards this for the African nation in terms of getting information out, because gambling is one source to get people to be engaged?
Gambling is one source of for people to be engaged. Gambling has been a source for sponsorship. You'll see, especially in England and much of Europe, a lot of gambling companies have been on the front of the chat. I think in the last 2 seasons, it was actually more than 50% of the teams had, gambling companies at the front of the chat. In Africa, SportPesa had grown leaps and bounds. I think it was the first African company, an English Premier League team. But beyond that, they were on at least 6 or 7 league teams. So in Kenya, they had 2 teams. They're there in South Africa, they're there in Tanzania, the top 2 teams. And that was the strategy that they took. But the curve has changed. So there's a very big conversation about betting and, the ills of betting. So in Kenya now, we have new laws. The betting companies have really strict laws. So they really have had to change their strategies around how they're connecting with their customers. Betting's still quite big. I would say in a country like Kenya, it's still quite big. We know of a company that's turning over about 4 billion Kenya shillings. That's 40 million rather, dollars every month. That's turnover. But then there has to be, there is currently a very big, balance, a way conversation around, what are the ethical issues around betting, and how does it affect, players? How does it affect the aspect of sport? But then there's also a very big conversation around they're taking money from, they're making their money from these fans who are watching sports. So how best can they be part of what it is that they're earning from, what they're bringing back? Recently, there was a company that ran an interesting campaign, and what they did was they decided to, get on ground and run a campaign where they were supporting local football teams, and they would go to the localized areas, bring the top team from that area that is in the league, get this team to play against the local teams. And every single team in that region, about 50 or 60 teams in the region, would get fully kitted. And these are things that sound very simple, but are very, very powerful for the little team down there that, they sit and think, how much will it cost me to buy a full set of kit? How much will it cost me to, I'm telling you, it sounds very simple, but
to get the basics,
yes. How much will it cost me to run a tournament and things like that? And this company did this in about 6 regions in the country. And this totally changed how people viewed them as a brand, but also in terms of just the engagement that created for football. And they were working together with the Kenya Football Federation. So that really brought people closer to the game. So there's a very big, weighted conversation around the ethical conversations, but other corporates have not jumped in. So they said, you know what, you guys are not.
I think that's global. I think outside of some of the bigger markets, especially in the developing nations, it is a problem where sponsor partners have not yet quite grabbed on.
Right.
We're going to be wrapping up soon, but I wanted to ask Emeka, who has obviously covered a whole lot of sports globally and within. In terms of legislation, does he know of any kind of government legislation which will protect, what legislation about gambling which will protect the integrity of the sport and how fans engage? Just quickly before, because I'm going to go to the closing statements in a while. So Emeka, can you think of anything that you've seen over the years that you think the government or successive leadership in the business would put towards engaging fans who gamble and how it can be protected? how the sport
I-
can be protected.
I think we cannot deceive ourselves a lot in Africa with some of these moral issues because in Africa, betting, gambling, and especially pools betting has been part of our culture for a very long time. And you know, it's just like talking about smoking or drinking. The truth of the matter, the truth of the matter is that we've got tremendous passion for sport, and people bet even amongst themselves. So even when you try and come up with legislations that try to limit, you know, how much impact the betting companies have on the populace, you don't stop the interpersonal betting, which is a much bigger problem. So I think that to a large extent, what needs to happen is to look at what are the advantages, and then what are the regulations, because I mean, ordinarily, just like and a lot of the betting is going to move towards mobile and web, and there'll be very few physical shops left. And this has already happened out there in the West, but we can see a lot of it in Africa because, like I said earlier, there's a lot more people playing with their phones. What I found really interesting was that these days, even in banking apps, you have betting links in banking apps. So I mean, I think it's just they're just being foolhardy. I think that the solution will be to carry out as much communication and education of what the vices are. It's like the Surgeon General's warning in smoking. People have also
And
won.
obvious,
People
and the
have
obvious
won.
value to the economy.
Exactly. People have won. And then what you then find is that, yes, there's a huge economic value, but you need to look at how much of that money that goes into betting comes back into the local sports. And we saw with Kenya, for instance, with SportPesa, practically almost sponsoring rugby, soccer, or football, and a lot more of the other sporting codes, even sponsoring a team in South Africa and sponsoring the team in England and bringing Everton and a few teams coming down. But there's this whole madness around the mentality that, oh, you've got to try and stop them. You know, you cannot stop them. Football fans or sports fans, they have a mentality. They go with their hearts, the passion they have for the game, for the sport. You know, the amount of money it costs them to buy a football shirt, they probably wouldn't buy a suit, but they're going to buy that shirt because they've got that passion for it, and that's how it is. They believe that their team is going to win. If you ask me to bet against my team, I probably wouldn't. So it's something that we need to turn around and look at. How do we turn this into something of economic value that, you know, helps to grow our sport? That's what
redevelop the sport.
That's what we should be looking at. How much of that money comes back into the game?
Okay. All right. So we're going to take the last 45 seconds to a minute to wrap up. There is a demand globally, not just in Africa, for African sports content. Let me just declare that. Even as a Jamaican, we declare Africa as our motherland, and people feel that some of our better athletes globally come from the Africa continent.
Yeah, you guys have taken our medals. You've taken our medals.
That's for another discussion. And again, I start with Mario. What then is the future? How will Africa content be distributed evenly, but at the same time to benefit you guys?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I urge, first of all, the African athletes and sports clubs, leagues, and federations to have a digital strategy, to execute a digital strategy, to work ongoingly on a plan, because first we need to stop, obviously, the big sponsors going abroad, internationally into the big European football leagues, for example, like SportPesa or Tourist Rwanda. Because Arsenal and Everton convinced them because they could prove how many people they can reach in Africa with their digital and social media postings. And I think if the African sports organization have a digital strategy, including social media, we can convince many of the sponsors to remain on the continent, to remain with the local teams, to strengthen the local economy, and also obviously use fan engagement as a significant circle to keep the momentum and the economy going. And I think that's that's the most important aspect I would urge at the moment. Yeah, first of all, have a digital strategy and then start to execute it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mario. Lolade, what the future holds for you? You know, how will you then move forward with your, for example, your business of sport kind of thing? What is the future for fans from your perspective?
I think it's important that sports properties and clubs in Africa and federations take the digital space very seriously. It's an opportunity to reach beyond their direct fans that come into the stadium. We can create fans across the world, just creating great content. And I believe great storytelling around athletes, every athlete, no matter from karate to tennis to football, have stories that need to be told. And sports federations, sports clubs need to, just not just use social media to share news from match game tweets and things. They need to tell the stories of their athletes more, much better than they are doing. And this way they can create a following for themselves and for their athletes and grow their brands. Better growth in brands brings in revenue through sponsorships on the long run. When the brands see that there's a story here and people are engaged with it, they will come in to put some support. But if we fold our hands and lose all the storytelling to the Premier League and to the Bundesliga, we will continue to stay as small as the leagues are at the moment. So I think storytelling on digital is very key for the future post COVID-19. Thank you.
I think Leslie would agree with me to say this is why we have the Africa Sports Ventures Group, because we are collaborating together to ensure that Africa content gets out in the market. So thank you, Lolade. Cynthia, Sports Connect, we spoke about getting sports out, but what then in the next 6 months post-COVID, well, what are some of the things you probably will start putting in place to ensure that the content from Africa does get out within your own confines, but certainly in a global space?
Definitely use of social media, but also education and empowerment of these teams and these federations. So many times we talk about what they should do, but we need to also come to the realization that they do not know what to do. So those of us who are in this space, we know. Lolade is an expert, Emeka is an expert, Mario is an expert, I'm an expert. But we're talking about guys who have been in sport. They understand the technical, they understand sports as it is, but they do not necessarily have a grasp. They do not have the capacity and the capability and understanding of the things that we're talking about now. So I think it's very critical that, and this can be done on the digital space, to create courses and get them engaged in understanding more about the fan engagement conversation, build their capabilities, build their capacity, and help them and help the teams move forward.
Okay, well, Emeka, you get the last word as described in the group, the journalist. In terms of what you've seen from all of your platforms that you've covered sports on, do you have any indication or any forecast or trend as to where fans would really like to go? So I'm asking you as the fan now, as opposed to in your capacity. Have they indicated anything that they'd like to, how they'd like to consume content going forward?
I think it should be the other way around. A lot of the African federations, leagues, clubs need to do one thing. Cynthia alluded to it earlier. The first one is they need to stop employing people who who have no idea what they're doing there. There's a lot of nepotism, there's a lot of cronyism, and appointing people who actually have no clue what they're doing there. Secondly, they need to be educated. They need to understand that sports is a business, and fan engagement is a science. There's no guesswork. If you don't offer fans the right kind of content, you don't give them the right channels, you don't create the right engagement, you don't also try and find out from them what they actually want. Because the problem is that a lot of them do not try and get the fans' perspective in terms of what kind of content they want and how they want to consume it, and they just make assumptions, and then they complain a lot. They tell you that there's Premier League on TV, there's Bundesliga, there's La Liga, and that's why fans are not coming to the stadium. If you do not engage with them, if you don't take the content to where they exist, you're not going to find those fans. And some of our research, if you find the data that we published at Digital Sports Africa, a lot of the clubs in Africa are actually sleeping. So on a typical weekend when you've got games, you're not offering the kind of engagement or the content, and you have only 20,000 followers on your platforms, you're definitely not going to get people come to your games because you're not reaching out to them. So there has to be a total paradigm shift where we've got to put people who are right. And if nothing has taught us a lesson, COVID-19 is the biggest lesson for Africa. We have far too many people running things, politicians, sports politicians. We have people who have absolutely no business being involved, who are generally just confused, because for the most part, throughout this COVID-19, African fans were engaged with European content. And the NBA, everyone's talking about the last dance. Where's the African dance?
Haha, that's a great way to end. I just want to say thanks to all our panelists, Cynthia, Mario, Emeka, and of course, Lolade. As I said, the perspective I have from my own, from Jamaica, and somebody who has been around, Africa content is in great demand. And so whatever regulations and rules you all need to put in place to ensure that it is done and that your nation benefits, goes back into development, that is the model that subsequently has to be followed. I want to thank David, Leslie, and the entire Africa Sports Ventures Group team for entrusting me to be your moderator for this session. And possibly if this wasn't COVID, we would not have met, because then I would probably have travel schedule issues and I wouldn't get to come at a particular time and so on. So, technology has really helped us, despite our adversities, to come together. I hope our listeners and viewers had a tremendous time, and we managed to answer all your questions. I summarized them, and I want to thank the panelists for taking time out of their extremely busy schedules to offer this information. I think the recording of this event will be shared on YouTube and Facebook, and we will tell you what happened. So it's back over to you, David, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
David, are you there?
Yes.
Might be
Yes,
Mr. David. All right, so I guess I'll fill in the meantime until David gets back. I have just a quick reminder. Tomorrow we'll be having a keynote speaker, President Weah of Liberia, and during the sessions was called by one of his top ministers and advisors to inform me that he'll be 15 minutes ahead of time. So he'll be on the conference tomorrow, waiting for his time to deliver his speech. He's already written out his speech that he's going to deliver tomorrow. So we're excited, and we are hoping that those of you who are here who will not be tomorrow, please, if you're not speaking tomorrow, we'll look forward to you being back tomorrow to witness the keynote address, and then of course the ministerial roundtable, and then the traditional sports, which is a huge topic of interest to us because we know the value of Senegalese wrestling that has a huge commercial value and something that we're looking forward to eventually becoming something of a mainstay in the mainstream. And then finally, we'll end up with the business of football. That's huge because we know football is a religion in Africa, and we look forward to that tomorrow. So we want to thank you all for showing up. I will have a keynote, vote of thanks that will be delivered by one of our guys, key guys in this operation, Mr. Yomi Omogbeja. But in the meantime, I just want to share a quick screen with you guys on something which we got planned, and I just want to show you that real quick. It should be right here. Right here. So I figure y'all can see my screen. Okay, so we have two things I just want to pass on to you guys. One is we're having a follow-up of this conference. In October, on October 23rd and 24th, we'll be having the Pan-African Sports Business Summit and Expo, described as where Africa's sports community meets the business world. We'll be bringing forth the necessary information for you all to be aware of that particular event in October. But we look forward to your participation and much more beyond that. This is about examining the relationship between the sports community and the business community. The next one is we've developed a program we call the African Ninja Warrior. It's an offshoot of a program that's out there in other countries, but we're having a Pan-African approach to it. It'll be shot on location in Liberia. We're working with the government of Liberia on that particular program, the first season of that. And we're expecting contestants from every country across Africa to be participating in that particular program. I want to thank you all for